Hey, what's going on, everybody? We're back with another BKFC Reddit Ask Me Anything. We're joined by the voice of the BKFC, Mr. Sean Wheelock. How you doing, sir?
Great. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate this. I appreciate all the support that you do on Reddit for Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. I know you're one of the hardcores and leading the hardcore community, and you guys are absolutely what's allowing us to become massive over the last 6 years. So thank you.
I feel like we have like a good group. Like the people are smart. That's what I like. I mean, like YouTube's got its place, but a lot of the YouTube commenters are kind of like leave a little bit. But I mean, like I feel like it's very intelligent groups. That's what I like about it.
Yeah, and I see from the comments, you guys are watching the shows. You guys are real fans. The UFC has that. I never experienced that in Bellator. We definitely have that in BKFC.
Okay, so let's. I want to talk right off the bat. 74 million people watched that female fight. How crazy is that? You were involved in that. That's amazing.
So it's interesting, right? That I really have a philosophy as a commentator that I treat every single show the same. I treat every fight the same. On BKFC, for instance, we'll do 11, 12 fights. The fighters will tell you whether it's Mike Perry or Ben Rothwell, or whether it's a 19-year-old kid in his BKFC debut and maybe Pro Combat Sports debut. They're treated the same by me. They get the same time in the fighter meeting, the same respect. I try just as hard to commentate every single fight. It doesn't matter. There's no sliding scale. I tell people I'm a light switch. I'm either on or I'm off. And if I'm there working, I'm on. When I'm home with my family, my kids, then I'm off. And I'm just being me and being a dad in Shawnee, Kansas, and a husband and a son. But so with that philosophy, whether I'm doing BKFC or Fighting Alliance Championship in Kansas City for my buddy Joe Wooster, or I'm doing Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul with tens of millions of people on Netflix, I try to keep the same approach. And I was even wondering to myself, like, am I going to feel different coming into the show? And I didn't. And it was really a sense of relief that this is just another show for me. Yeah, it's huge. And sometimes clients don't want to hear that this is just another show, but I have to treat Combat FC the same way that I treat Netflix boxing, and that's my 100% best effort. And I really pride myself on that. I saw a great quote from Mills Lane, who's one of my heroes, the great boxing referee. He was a district court judge. He actually married my wife and me in his courtroom.
How
And
cool.
there's a great Mills Lane quote. You'll see it on my Instagram. I'm paraphrasing, but something to the effect of, I try just as hard to referee in a 4-rounder as I do in a world title fight, because to those two fighters, it's the most important fight of their life and they deserve my best. And that's the way I treat every show. Now, with all of that said, I will tell you that I've heard from people I went to high school with. I heard from both of my bosses at Bellator, heard from people I worked with at Pride. I've heard from people that I have not heard from in 10 to 20 years. I heard from my family. I heard from my closest friends. What I thought was kind of funny, too, my last name, Wheelock, is a really uncommon last name.
Mhm.
Numerous people who clearly had not watched fights, had never heard of me, hit me up on social media saying, wow, that was so crazy to see another Wheelock, just because it's such an unusual last name. And Netflix was very kind, not just that I was on the show, but on my unofficial scorecard. I didn't know what the graphics was going to be. And I didn't see it until it came on air. We didn't have a preview and rehearsal of the graphics where it said Wheelock scorecard. So I think a lot of the rando Wheelocks out there who live a lifetime without ever meeting another Wheelock definitely got a kick out of that.
How do you not? I mean, like you clearly got to be friends with a lot of fighters. How do you not like have a favoritism? How do you show impartiality?
Yeah, it's weird because I develop a lot of close friendships, and to the point where so often in fights, I like both people equally and a lot. I have to switch something off in my brain, and for whatever reason, my personality allows me to do that. If my dear friend Chris Lytle, best broadcast partner I've ever had, if Chris were to take another fight, and I know Chris wants to take a fight somewhere, if Chris were to take another fight as close as we are, and I really consider him one of my best friends, I would throw that switch and I would be neutral.
Okay.
I really am just thinking about trying to enhance what people are watching, doing my best possible job. In that moment, I do not care who wins or loses, and it's just the way I'm wired. Afterwards, I might feel excitement for someone. I might feel sympathy for somebody. Oftentimes, it's the same thing.
Right.
I can tell you on our last card, there was a fight where I was really close to both people, and I'm consoling one person, I'm congratulating the other with equal sincerity. It's just something about I pride myself on being neutral, being impartial. I've always hated that as a sports fan, as a fight fan, when you hear bias, and you're never going to hear that from me. I generally have the personality. I pretty much like everybody. There are only a
Sure.
few people who I don't like, and they've gone out of their way. They all work for Spike, by the way. They went out of their way not to be very nice to me. But outside of that, I generally like everybody, and I just want to see great fights. I really, in the moment, do not care who wins or loses. You know, what's funny to me is on the Serrano Taylor fight.
Mhm.
I only saw maybe 4 or 5 negative comments about my scorecard, and I clicked on their profile, and they were either from England, where my wife is from, or from the Republic of Ireland. And I said to my wife, God, I can't even imagine being like a college football commentator where who do you think will win, Ohio State or Michigan? Then you make your pick, and then 50% of the people in the audience are telling you you're the worst human being in the world. So I don't get a taste of that very often, and I wasn't biased. I scored Serrano, Taylor. I didn't care who won. I like them both equal. I know
Sure.
Amanda better than I know Katie, but they're both awesome and awesome fighters. It's just in that moment, I think as a commentator, you have to have two. Well, two. There are a few things, but two things is your baseline, right? You have to be honest with your audience because no one wants to be lied to with the hyperbole. It's the greatest fight ever. These are the greatest fighters I've ever seen. And you have to be neutral. You have to be impartial.
Okay, so you were talking about Chris Lytle. Chris Lytle says he really thinks that fences make good neighbors, and he would like you to tell us about your homeowners association and your fence around your pool.
So we put I've done okay, and I live in a pretty nice neighborhood with a little bit of land. And the story is about 12 years ago, so I was still at Bellator. I installed a swimming pool, and I grew up. I'll backtrack for a minute. So I grew up in a little Kansas City suburb called Shawnee, where I still live. I live 8 miles from where my mom lives, the house I grew up in, and I'm the only child of a single mom who was a public school art teacher. So by no means were we poor, but it was something where I tell people you go to the 4:30 movie instead of the 7 o'clock movie. It's that type of thing, you know. You can drink. I didn't drink Diet Mountain Dew then, but you can drink your soda at home because it's a little expensive in the restaurant. It's just being smart with your money when you don't have a lot of money, and I love that. I try to instill that value in my girls. My wife is English. She grew up in a very similar way. That you're not poor, but you're not in a position where you waste money either. So, with all that said, I never really thought I would have a pool. I get to a position in life, have a nice house on some land, have a pool. If you've not grown up with money and then you move in a wealthy neighborhood, I don't think you're ready for the culture shock of that. And as someone in a neighborhood where I think the great expression is a lot of people in life were born on third base and thought they hit a triple, that might be some of my neighbors. Other people are business owners and hard workers, but then other people, hey, they found themselves in different circumstances. So we put in a pool, put in a very, very expensive lockdown pool cover, which my city, Shawnee, Kansas, said, hey, that's fine. You don't have to have a fence. And we've got some land and it's beautiful. The people behind me have 5 acres, and it's not really a neighborhood where you would want a fence.
Okay.
So, city of Shawnee, Kansas says, no problem. I know this isn't a great story. I'm going to end it soon.
No, you're good.
Lionel asked, uh, put in my pool, no fence, and then here they came. How dare you not put in a fence? I was like, well, my pool cover cost about a third of what my mom paid for our first house, but that wasn't good enough. So I will just conclude the story by saying those of you who tell you that you can't beat City Hall are incorrect because I was able to beat City Hall. Thank you very much. I think to the point of they just got sick of dealing with me.
Okay, so one of your other co-hosts, Cyrus Fees, would like you to tell us about the worst event you ever, or the craziest event you ever worked in Phoenix. He said.
Oh yeah, no, this is great. And it was fun. And on my career, even the disorganized, insane shows, I take something away from, and they're fun. I can tell you my entire career, even when I was like doing high school soccer on Metro Sports in Kansas City, there was something fun about that. So Cyrus and I first meet. It's March 2016. So Bellator had gotten rid of me in 2015. So it's about 8 months after my end of Bellator, and we're on a show called Your Fight. And I hope he's watching. A good friend of mine named Chris Maltzberger got me on the show. It was a Canadian company. I think they were an advertising company. They started putting out it was going to be Roy Jones Jr. versus a fan, which was nonsensical because no athletic commission is going to let Roy Jones Jr. fight a fan. The wink, wink, quote unquote fan turned out to be an MMA fighter out of Minnesota. I think he was 7-1 at the time, named Byron Phillips. So it's Cyrus. Dave Clifford is one of the ring announcers. My good buddy Justin Roberts, who had just come off of WWE, who's now at AEW and smashing it. I love Justin. He was there. I love Cyrus. I knew Cyrus, and we really bonded then. It's so great that we've become so close and work together now. Jen Sturger, who has had some fame. Jen Sturger was on the show. And then the three commentators were Jim Ross, Quentin Rampage Jackson, and myself.
Wow.
So you have Roy Jones Jr. versus the MMA guy who they pretended was a fan, Byron Phillips. We have Shannon the Cannon Rich versus Maverick Harvey. We have another MMA bout. We have a grappling match, which is Chael Sonnen and Michael Bisping. And then we have a pro wrestling, which is Rey Mysterio and Kurt Angle. And I've described the card, so there were about half that many people there. I think they did everything but remember to sell tickets. And I don't know who watched it. I've looked for it on the internet. It was called Your Fight, You Are. Funny enough, there was not so funny for them. There was an apparel, a fight manufacturer apparel, which was like Your Fight, You Are fight, I think out of Tennessee or Kentucky. And my understanding is they successfully sued for name infringement or copyright infringement this Your Fight. They were lovely people. They paid me a lot of money. I had a blast. I got developed my friendship with Cyrus. First time I met Justin Roberts. Chael Sonnen's my buddy. It was fun with him. Bisping was there. I loved Jim Ross. I knew Rampage from Bellator. But that show was insane. So we were at Celebrity Theater. Again, you have to think about it. There's Roy Jones, Chael Sonnen, Michael Bisping, Kurt Angle, Rey Mysterio, and there were like 4 people there. It's the only time I've ever worked a show where they had 0 sponsorships on the canvas. It was a plain white pro wrestling canvas that felt like a trampoline. No sponsorships, no ads, no logos. It looked like a pro wrestling canvas in 1964. No corner cushions, nothing. And yep, that was the last show that Your Fight ever did. But I had a great time.
Okay, the guys at Shift said they know that you know your way around the ring. When do you plan on going to Tampa so you can teach them some stuff?
To where? I'm sorry?
Shift Combat, Jihad, and all those guys down there.
Yeah, I've told Jihad, I said, and there's some really good trainers, but I told Jihad, I said, if I were 20 years old and trying to become a bare knuckle fighter, I would relocate to Tampa and I would go to your gym. They have figured it out. They're like the shoot-to-box of MMA in the 1990s,
Sure.
except shoot-to-box smashed each other in training, and these guys are really smart.
Sure.
But yeah, Jihad Wingfield has become a great friend. The fact that Mundell is there, Jared Warren, Crystal Pittman. It is an amazing gym. Brandon Allen, Jessica Borg. I'm definitely going to forget people, and I apologize. It is a phenomenal gym. I love them. They were early adopters. They saw the potential in bare knuckle. They changed the way people fight. Dave Mundell will tell you. I commentated Dave Mundell in MMA, and he fights differently. Jared Warren will tell you when he was a kickboxer, he didn't fight like that. They take great, naturally gifted fighters. They bring in their philosophy, and I have nothing but respect for what they do. I just think they're great.
Is your daughter's name Ellie?
I'm sorry. I think our stream is breaking up. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Is your daughter's name Ellie? Is that her name?
My older daughter is Ellie, and my younger daughter is Hadley.
Okay, Ellie said she would like you to tell us where the Mountain Dew photos and stuff started at.
I don't know if Ellie's watching. She and Hadley are babysitting this 2-year-old girl that they look after right now. Yeah, that's what I get asked a lot. Um, Usually, if people find out what I do, and I'm a guy who leads a very quiet life. I never tell people what I do. Usually, if someone on a plane, what do you do? I'm a consultant, and that quiets people because they don't know where to go. It sounds really boring and confusing. So I say I'm a consultant. But uh, if someone finds out I work in fighting, but they don't really know me, I get asked, "Do you know Joe Rogan?" That's what I get asked. If they
Of
do
course.
know me and they know BKFC, they'll ask me the Diet Mountain Dew story. So here's the story. So I have one thing in life that's beaten me, and that's caffeine. Um, I love Diet Mountain Dew. I tell people it's a shoot, it's not a work. So Knuckle Mania 1 at the end of the night, I finished my 2 liter. And for people who don't know, and a lot of people do now know, because I am physically addicted to caffeine, not sugar, caffeine. I drink a lot of Diet Mountain Dew. I always have a 2 liter bottle, room temperature, because it's better for your voice and your throat. Room temperature in every fight that I commentate. I've been doing this for years and years. Goes back certainly to Bellator. Um, so at the end of Knuckle Mania 1, our great photographer, Phil Dawson, takes a photo of me, and we're off air, and I'm not even paying attention. So I have the bottle like this. And Phil has this very artistic black and white photo. It looks like Ansel Adams, if anybody gets that reference, and puts it on
Sure.
social media. Nate Shook says to me, our great matchmaker, one of my dear friends, is like, wow, that was crazy. How did Phil Photoshop that in? And like they had the bottle cap on the side. It was like, what are you talking about? And he goes, well, that photo. I go, dude, you have no idea that I drink a 2 liter of Diet Mountain Dew on every show, and I have for years. He said, I never noticed. The very next week, I'm commentating a lion fight in Cheyenne, Wyoming on UFC Fight Pass. So, as literally as an inside joke for one person, Nate Shook, I hold up the bottle and I point like, I told you, look, somehow people liked it. It got a lot of play on social media. My daughters, who are 13 and 19, do my social media. They picked up on that. And this is Knucklemania 1. So, what is this, 5 years ago? Picked up on that. I thought, okay, this
Sure.
is kind of interesting. They said, Dad, you should do that at every show. And I said, I don't know. But I did it at the next show when I started doing it. And then the Mountain Dew people reached out on social media. And I thought, here comes the sponsorship. So they sent a lot of bottles of
Sure.
Diet Mountain Dew. They sent merchandise and all of that to never be heard from again. But I was very appreciative for the
Um,
free stuff, and I've continued on.
awesome. Okay, I think you saw this one. James Lilly would like to know what's your favorite country other than the U.S.
All right, James Lilly, look at that. There's the Welsh flag. James Lilly has given me a great flag, which is we have upstairs in the house, and then that's David Round from BKFC, my buddy too. Again, my wife is
Sure.
English. I'm a huge Anglophile. There's a warmth in the Welsh people that I love. The first time I was in Wales was 2 years before I met my wife. My buddy was living in England at the time, my best friend from high school in Kansas City. And we were in Wales. All I knew about Wales, literally all I knew about Wales, I was 21 years old, I think. No, 22 years old, was don't call them English. That was like all I knew. And I was in Cardiff and Newport, and I thought, wow, this is brilliant. I mean, maybe as an American Midwesterner, it just felt a little more my tempo. And with my English
Sure.
wife, numerous times we've gone to Wales. One of her aunts wasn't Welsh, but married a Welsh guy, and throughout her childhood, she would always go to Wales. So I absolutely adore Wales. Again, I'm a massive Anglophile. I love going to the UK, but there's something really special about Wales for me, to the point where I definitely hope that we do a BKFC UK in Cardiff or somewhere in Wales at some point.
I know James Lilly has been pushing for that, so hope so too. Okay, Big Ben says you speak a lot of languages. I was curious, how many languages do you
I
speak? And then he wanted to know
don't.
if you could say, "Oh, you don't?"
So here's what I do is I learn some really basic phrases and greetings in a lot of languages, because when we do our fighter meetings and I'm meeting people for the first time, it puts people at ease. So I know a little bit of Portuguese. I know a decent amount of Spanish. I know a little bit of Russian, and I've been to Russia 30 times when I worked for M1. So, Ben, I appreciate that. I am not fluent in any language. I'm trying really hard in Portuguese. But so, for instance, on the Tyson Paul fight, on the undercard, Whindersson Nunes, on our fighter meeting, I said, bon dia, and it just immediately, by me saying bon dia, good day, with a not terrible Brazilian Portuguese accent, it put him at ease. It changed the whole tempo, the whole temperature of everything. And we got a warm, great fighter reviews. And at the end, obrigado, just to put that in. So I wish I were multilingual, but it's really just knowing certain key phrases. And it's really just to try to find common ground with people. If I see a Russian fighter, I'll show my Cyrillic tattoos, which are my daughters, Ellie and Hadley, in Cyrillic. At the end, I'll say Dobry večer, which is good evening. It changes the tempo of everything, and that's what I like. I do wish that I were multilingual, though. I'm closer in Spanish, but I'm trying hard in Portuguese.
Okay. Your good buddy and my good buddy Nick Sampson would like you to tell us about being married to a British lady.
Yeah, it's the best. I tell people a lot of times it's being married to someone like what I would think the 1950s were like to the point where our vacuum, or was my wife and Nick would say a Hoover. I don't know where it is. My wife would get nervous if I touched it. I've never done laundry. Now, keep in mind, I'm the only child of a single mom, so you pitch in and you do things. But my wife is
Sure.
extremely open-minded and fun. She's not uptight at all. Again, she doesn't come upper class. People are always surprised when she swears, because I think they think that she's going to be like Sarah, Duchess of York. But she's great and so relatable. We've been together over 20 years. But there are just certain things. It's just much more traditional, at least in my English/American household. When my wife and I were first together, and Nick will get this, and all English and British people will get this. My buddies David Round and James Lilly in Wales will get this. My wife would do a Sunday dinner and a Sunday roast, and my wife hates to cook.
Okay.
And after a while, I was like, babe, well, what are you doing? She goes, oh, I thought a wife was supposed to do a big Sunday meal. Not in this family. And that was the end of the big cooking for the dinner. So very traditional in some ways. She doesn't love to cook, but again, she won't let me near the washing machine, the dryer. We have a laundry room that's kind of off limits to me. If I were to start vacuuming, hoovering, it would be like I had maybe set the house on fire. She would not be pleased.
It's funny because I had talked to Nick a whole bunch online, but I had never talked to him over the phone. And then one day he said, "Hey, I need to call you." And I thought he was doing an Australian accent because in real life I work with alligators and crocodiles. So I thought he was being Steve Irwin, and I was like, "Why are you talking with that accent?" And he goes, "That's my voice." And
Yeah, that's right. Nick is, for people who don't know, and I'll tell the Nick story. I adore Nick. English, he was a police officer in St. Louis. He now lives in Cleveland. Started HKA USA, which I believe is Huntington Kickboxing Academy, United States of America. So when I was working for Triller Fight Club, simultaneously with BKFC, and then of course Triller comes in, and there's no more Triller Fight Club, but Triller is an equity owner and investor in BKFC. But we had Triller Fight Club, so I thought I was just going to be the commentator. There weren't a lot of MMA people there, so a lot of those duties fell to me. So on the first Triller Triad, which was the one in the triangle, right, with Mike Perry and Derek Campos, Matt Mitrione, Frank Mir, Kubrat Pulev, when Mike Perry beat Michael Seals in boxing, somehow it was tasked on me to find the gloves. And I called around. We used some, I won't say the brand because they're good people. They weren't the right gloves. We were going to do a second one. It never happened, but we were going to do a second one. And so Alexa Cole, El Wagman, my friends who were training at the time out of Glory MMA in Kansas City, said, we love these 6-ounce puffies, these MMA training gloves. It's HK USA. And I told him, well, I've heard of that brand. I don't have a contact. So, oh, no, it's a great guy. He's an English guy named Nick. We'll give you his number. Cole called him, hit him up. We did a deal for 100 pairs of gloves. There was never a second Triller Triad. I don't know what happened to those 100 pair of gloves. They're sitting somewhere in Los Angeles, I imagine. But Nick has become just a fantastic friend. He's so kind. He sponsors me. He's sponsoring my refs and judges seminar I have coming up. Everyone's going to get a gift bag from Nick, a T-shirt, and some other items. And I encourage people, if you're a gym owner or a fighter or you train, it's easy to go to a major brand. But if you think about it, you're buying from a guy who really is living the American dream. This is his company.
Yeah.
He's a retired police officer. He's all in. And I tell people it's the best quality stuff that I've seen. But even beyond that, I think it's really cool to support a local business where you can get the owner on the phone as opposed to some mega corporation.
Absolutely. My graphics guy, Carmine, he would like to know, what is your favorite BKFC fight that you've called?
Alfredo Angulo versus Jeremiah Riggs. And I'm sorry, Jeremiah, you're probably watching. This is another fight where Jeremiah is a really good friend of mine. When he fought and knocked out Sonny Smith in Canada, Jeremiah was part of our dinner group with Lytle and Cyrus and Jeff Houston and me, all going out, and I had no bias in that fight, but Jeremiah is a really good friend. A guy I've known almost 15 years, going back both when we were in Bellator. So I'm sorry, Jeremiah, but Alfredo Angulo, a fighter, we just commentated him. Julian Lane had a great victory over Angulo 2 weeks ago. Angulo was a boxer who I loved because I loved his style, WBO world champion, 154 pounds. We knew, Chris Lytle and I knew that was going to be an amazing fight, but it was an insane fight. The fact that Jeremiah is just destroying Angulo. Angulo won't fall down. And Chris says on commentary, if you watch back, Jeremiah Riggs has to be careful. He's about to punch himself out. He gets clipped, he gets dropped, and then he takes the 10 count. So I feel bad for Jeremiah, but wow, that was a great fight. It is my favorite fight. My favorite fight in Bellator of all time was Joe Warren versus Joe Soto. You can see that on YouTube. It's from September 2010 in San Antonio. This is like the BKFC equivalent. Riggs versus Angulo, absolutely number one.
Do you have, this one's from the Reddit community, do you have a favorite venue that you like to either see fights at or call fights?
I really don't, because I find, and this sounds like a rote answer, but I mean this sincerely, I find something special everywhere that we go. In the early days of BKFC, when we were playing smaller venues in Mississippi, there was something special there. It was really cool when we were in Spain. On the Costa del Sol, the south coast of Spain. We were probably a mile and a half from the Mediterranean Sea. I just love the fight life. I don't want to do anything else. I'm so happy. So whether we're in a Ramada Inn ballroom or we're in a bullfighting arena in Spain, I find something special about that. There are certain venues that we go to. I know that when we're at Seminole Hard Rock in Hollywood, Florida, it's going to be loud, it's going to be passionate, knowledgeable, we're going to sell out. But there's something cool about every place. And I also get excited when we're going to a new venue. This week in Los Angeles, we're at Thunder Studios. I've never been. I've seen fights from there on TV. I'm a guy who loves venues. I always have, even as a little kid. I love seeing stadiums. I love arenas. I would always, as a 6, 7, 8-year-old, when, again, I was raised by my mom, but my dad was in my life, he would take me to sporting events all the time. That was the big thing that my dad and I had when I was little, go to sporting events. So I wouldn't just be happy going to Kemper Arena. I would want to walk around Kemper Arena. I would want to see it all. I don't know where that comes from. I've never studied architecture. I just love venues. I love arenas. I love stadiums. I just love to see how they're constructed, the feel of it, the flow of it. And I find something really cool and really special everywhere I go.
Okay, the community is curious how big you are, because you always stand beside Lytle. Lytle's not a small guy, and you kind of tower over him. So they're curious if they could get your stats.
Yeah, by the way, I think I'm pretty strong. I always think they're strong for under and over 200 pounds. So I'm 6'3", 190. I think I'm really, really strong, physically strong for under 200 pounds. Lytle is so much stronger. It's insane. I guess he should be. If I fought 20 times in the UFC, maybe, and I was 3-0 in bare knuckle, maybe I'd be as strong as Chris. But Yeah, 6'3", and 190. When I started high school, I was
Oh,
5'3". It was weird.
oh wow.
My late father was 6 foot. I didn't know my dad's dad and don't know anything about him. My mom's dad was a basketball and Division I basketball and football player at Kansas State University. I'm not sure what happened to the gene pool that I didn't get any of that athleticism, but he was 6 foot. So yeah, 6'3", 190. It's funny. I always tell Lytle I feel like we're the same height. And then if I'll glance the monitor, I'm like, wow, Chris, I'm taller than you. But I don't feel like that. I think part of the fact that I was under 6 foot when I graduated high school, I never felt like a tall person. Then weirdly, I kept growing until I was about 21. So I never think of myself as that tall. I'm a huge Howard Stern fan, and Howard Stern is 6'6", and he talks about how tall he was in high school, and he was always aware of how tall he was. I never had that experience. So even now, I never really feel like I am 6'3". It's odd.
Do you have a favorite play-by-play? Like when you were growing up, did you? I mean, was that something you were really interested in, listening to the play-by-play, and that you wanted to get into it?
In broadcasting,
Yeah, in broadcasting.
yeah, I'm sorry. There's a slight hitch on the screen. It was freezing, so I apologize. It's all I wanted to do. I'm old enough to have grown up when we had tape recorders. Which my kids are saying, "What's a tape recorder? What's a newspaper? Right? What's a magazine? What's a telephone? Landline, anyway." But I'm old enough to have grown up with tape recorders, and there are cassette tapes of 6 and 7 and 8 year old me um, that are doing like play by play and sportscast and interview shows. I don't remember a time when I didn't want to be a commentator. Most play by plays will not admit it, but we're the kids who love sports, who are slightly nerdy, not overly athletic, but we still play sports. And we're not good enough, so then we channel into something else. It's a certain strain of kid who loves sports, but is slightly nerdy to also want to know all the stats, or maybe more than slightly nerdy, but you're still playing all the sports, so you still have your friends are the jocks. You're just like the worst, least athletic person on the team. We all seem to find play by play. I think I'm the only play by play guy in the world who will admit that. But I was at my mom's the other day and I saw a box, and I'm always looking for my old toys to give to my kids. Like, for instance, Hadley, my 13-year-old, she's very girly, but she loves Matchbox and Hot Wheels, which is funny because she doesn't watch auto racing. She doesn't know anything or care or two about mechanics, but she loves cars and Hot Wheels, and so I'm always looking in Matchbox. And I found something from the Super Bowl when I was 8 years old, and I had written down
Oh
like
wow.
all of this stuff. I mean, that speaks volumes. I'm a huge Central States pro wrestling fan. I'm not a big pro wrestling fan now. Justin Roberts is having my daughter Hadley and I come to the AEW in Kansas City next month, which I'm excited about. I'm a very casual wrestling fan. Cyrus and Fees and Jeff Houston are the hardcores, and Brian Sosha, who was a pro wrestler. They're all the hardcores. But I was a real hardcore fan as a kid, especially Central States territory, NWA, and I found programs, and I would actually, and I'm talking as a little kid, I'm talking 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, would circle the winner, write the result, and then the time. So it'd be like Bruiser Bob Sweethand defeated Rufus R. Jones by pinfall, 12 minutes 31 seconds. Those are the types of people who become play-by-play commentators.
Okay, I know you have your referee training class coming up. One of the other moderators who's with me, he's in Minnesota. He said he did your class there in Minnesota and he learned a lot. Can you tell us about your upcoming class?
Yeah, thank you. So, one thing that I do, and I started in all this fun is a pro boxing referee. Um, it was to the point where when I really didn't have much of a broadcasting career, but I was trying hard, just not making much money, doing some local cable things like high school soccer and indoor soccer, and being a local sports or radio reporter, not making much money at all. Um, I really thought about, through my friendship with the late great Mills Lane, best boxing referee ever, moving to Nevada and trying to become a full time boxing referee. I got married. I started to get some broadcasting work and some TV work, but I stayed as a referee for a long time. If you go on BoxRec, you'll see me. I think it has about 1/20th of my fights. Kind of like Chris Lytle. Chris lost a lot of his early fights on Tapology. I lost most of mine that I ref just because I just didn't keep records. I'm talking late 1990s, early 2000s. So that was my entry into all of this. Before I ever commentated, I was refereeing professional boxing, 22, 23 years old when I started. I was twice appointed to the Kansas Athletic Commission. I tell people that's kind of like being on the board of directors of a not-for-profit. You're not the executive director. You're an appointee. You're not paid. At least you're not in Kansas. It's a labor of love, and I absolutely loved it. So I'm big into the regulatory side. For years, I have attended to try to become a better commentator always. Boxing and judging courses, refs and judges courses of both boxing and MMA. Rob Hines, John McCarthy, Jack Reese, Mills Lane, Dwayne Ford. I want to learn all of that. Before we went for BKFC to Utah, my buddy Scott Bowler, who's the executive director of the Utah Athletic Commission, said, "Hey, would you mind doing just something over Zoom, a training, just show some videos for refs and judges?" Sure, man, no problem. I'd love to do that. I really enjoy that. My mom, like I said, is a retired teacher. I think teaching's a little bit of my DNA. I really enjoy that. Got a great response. There were some California people on. California then asked me to do one. So I've started to do a lot of these to the point where I'm actually certified by the ABC. That for people who don't know what the ABC is, that's the Association of Boxing Commissions and Combative Sports. It's the collection of all of the athletic commissions, state, tribal, and then in Canada, provincial. So it's the regulatory agency for these state, provincial, tribal regulatory bodies for fighting athletic commissions in the U.S. and Canada. ABC certified me as a bare knuckle refs and judges trainer. So I did one in Denver when we were for the Colorado Commission, when we were just out for BKFC. We had an off week. I was in Orlando with Caribe Royale. I did one for the Florida Athletic Commission. I thought, you know what, I'd like to put on my own. Cool thing about Kansas City, aside from it's the best city in the United States, is that we're within 8 hours driving distance of a lot of cities. Denver to the west, Chicago to the east, Minneapolis to the north, Dallas to the south. There are so many cities within that 8-hour circle. And then within there, places like Des Moines, Omaha, Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Wichita. So you can get a lot of people coming in. Kansas City is also a really inexpensive city to fly into. It's super easy, super accessible. So I thought I'll put on my own training. I had my older daughter, Ellie, who runs my social media mainly. Hadley does too, my 13-year-old, but Ellie putting that out there. I said, let's just see if we get a response. And within the first day, we had 48 people saying they wanted to do it. I would have been thrilled if we had 30 total. So we're up to 78 in registration. The room that I just booked today for this, I was living dangerously. I was like, I know I'm going to find a room, but let's put this out first and gauge the interest. Is it 120? So there's still space available. I know in broadcasting, I was saying, this is definitely going to sell out. This time, I think might actually sell out. So it will be in Kansas City. So it's a certified course through the ABC, Association of Boxing Commissions and Combative Sports. On Saturday, January 11th, we do our bare knuckle judges course. And then on Sunday, January 12th, we do our bare knuckle refs course. I'm hoping to bring in Lytle. We've already had people come in. I think people from 14 different states have already signed up. We have 3 Canadians coming in, including my buddy Todd Anderson, who's one of the best MMA referees in the world. This is a real compliment to me. After I got off air from Tyson Paul, Mark Colloy, the referee of Tyson Paul, we're talking off air. We're talking about the fight, and he said, "Hey, Sean, I'm signing up. I want to come to your bare knuckle course. I really want to start refereeing bare knuckle."
Oh, cool.
So I don't want to scare anybody off either, because you have to have an entry. Whether you're a fan, whether you're a fighter, a trainer, you're a referee, a judge, this is open to everybody. And I've always been about inclusion my whole life. So whether you're a Mark Colloy coming in, Nick Barons, who all BKFC fans know, Nick is one of the top bare knuckle refs in the world. But it's continuing education. Nick will be there. No matter your experience level, no matter your skill level, men, women, it doesn't matter of age. We'll have people in their 70s and we'll have people in their early 20s there. This is the way to get in. When I was on the outside in combat sports, and then I was able nicely, as I said, at 22 to become a referee, I always saw these athletic commissions. It was like this secret society. And in a lot of places, they do kind of feel like a secret society. People say, I want to ref, I want to judge, I want to be a timekeeper, an inspector. How do I get in? This is how you get in. You come to one of these courses. There are going to be a lot of executive directors there from around the country. Andy Foster, the head of California, is coming. Matt Showalter from Minnesota's he'll be in. Brian Dunn from Nebraska, all over the country. You get to meet the right people at these courses. It's as much about the information that you pick up through these courses as it is about meeting people. I tell people, if you think about this, this is kind of like a degree. You get a degree by attending these courses, and then you take that degree and then you go out to people who will hire. And the people who will hire are these athletic commissions and sanctioning bodies. Say, I've completed this certified course. Here's my certification, and you'll get that. You'll get an actual certification, and that gets you started. You talk to someone like Dan Mergliot. How did you get in? Andy Glenn, Nick Behrens. Everybody needs a way in, and the way in is to get in through these courses. I'm teaching bare knuckle refs and judges. If you want to do boxing, take one of those courses. If you do MMA, take one of those courses, and they're fun. We'll have a social hour. HKA USA is sponsoring. Bucked Up Energy is sponsoring. Bare Knuckle is going to be sending a lot of gifts. We'll do drawings. We're going to have a social hour. I have a sponsor for that with free drinks. It's a really fun time. You're going to learn a lot. There's a lot of video. There's a lot of demonstration. But again, I encourage people not to be intimidated if you're on the outside. And don't say, oh, I'm just a fan. We're all fans. You can be a fan. You can be a fighter, a trainer. It doesn't matter your age, male or female. It doesn't matter your experience level. This is a way to come in. Last thing I'll say on this too is I've been teaching this. What I've really loved is that we get this great mix of people. When I've taken, for instance, boxing refs or judges training, I look around the room. It's all boxing people. MMA, look around the room. It's all MMA people. I look around the room in these bare knuckle courses, and we have a phenomenal mix. The one I just taught in Orlando, and I even said it to the group, Blake Grice is in my course, and Robert Hoyle is in my course. For people who don't know, Blake is with us now in bare knuckle reffing, one of the 5 best MMA referees on the planet. Robert Hoyle is an A++ pro boxing referee and judge. And I said, when has anybody ever seen a seminar where you have Blake Grice and Robert Hoyle in the same room? Well, you see it in bare knuckle. So you'll see Nick Behrens and you'll see Mark Kalloy from Tyson Paul, because this is the sport where we're open, we're new, we're welcoming to everybody. And if you have no experience, guess what? This is what gets you the experience, and this is what gets you in.
Okay, well, that's a lot to process. As a fan myself, and someone who tries to be into it, it's definitely something I'm considering, and it sounds like a lot of fun. You're 9 hours away from me up in northern Wisconsin, so it's definitely something I want to look at doing.
Yeah, and if anybody's interested, so hit me up on social media. There's a link in my profile. If you look in Facebook, if you look in Instagram, I'm really accessible. As you know personally, if people reach out to me on social media, it might take me a little while, but I will absolutely get back to you. And I'm definitely looking out for people, because I'm getting flooded with responses, people asking about the course, wanting to take the course. So hit me up. You'll hear back from me directly. We'll get you registered, and hopefully we'll get you to Kansas City. Again, it's January 11th and 12th. And I've priced it not to make money, but to get as many people as possible. It's $200 if you want to take one course, and only $50 more if you want to take the second course. So $200 for one course, $250 if you take both the referees and judges. Judges on Saturday, January 11th, and the referees Saturday, January 11th. The referees on Sunday, January 12th for bare knuckle in Kansas City.
Okay, my last question I usually ask the fighters, so I'm kind of nervous asking you. Do you remember the first time? When you were growing up, were you somebody who fought quite a bit? Do you remember the first time you got in a street fight or anything?
I'm sorry you did freeze on me, so I'm hoping we'll get that again. The first time what? I'm so sorry.
the first time that you ever got in like a street fight, the first time, like in elementary school, did you ever get in any fights?
Yeah, I not a lot. Nothing past junior high school, and I was not. It's funny as much as I've always loved fighting. I was never a tough or a thuggy kid. I just my personality. I just generally get along with people. I
Sure.
remember a kid. I wasn't the thinnest child for a while, and when I was about 10 or 11, a kid uh, made a comment that maybe I wasn't the thinnest kid at school, which I probably wasn't. And all I knew was professional wrestling. So I put him in the hardest side headlock that I could until he started to cry, and then I felt bad and I let him go and I went home. So that was about it.
Awesome. Well,
I
it's
think
always great to
that
see you on the
additional weight.
screen.
I think that's
That's a funny story. I love that. I feel like we've watched you like just get better and better, and you're like one of those like familiar faces that we love to see Friday and Saturday nights. I like Friday nights, but I mean I know like Saturday nights have to be a thing too. But we just love that we get to watch you. We're big fans of you on the Reddit, and we appreciate your time.
Yeah, no, man, I so appreciate that, and I will tell you, it's funny. So I was in Bellator for 5.5 years. I did 127 Bellators. I'm at about if you include the two toe the lines, I think we're something like 106 or 108 in bare knuckle. Um, the response that I've had from the bare knuckle fans, the bare knuckle community towards me is just so humbling. I'm so honored. I never felt that in Bellator. I didn't feel like people disliked me, but it was almost a surprise. Like, oh yeah, we really like you and Jimmy Smith, or we watch you. I just didn't feel that community. I felt like in Bellator, and I'm not trying to say bad things on Bellator. I was there for 5.5 years, and 4 of those were awesome. I will say that, but um, the awesome ones all involve Bjorn Rebney. That's what I will say. But I just felt like these were UFC fans because they were, who are hardcores like me. It was like, okay, I'll watch Bellator too. I didn't get that sense of community. I mean, from the beginning, there's that sense of community in bare knuckle. Like literally, we're at BKFC 3 and 4, and I'm seeing the same fans who I saw at 1 and 2. I remember seeing BKFC fans. BKFC 4 was February 2019, Lytle's last fight, by the way, when he beat JC Yamas, and there were fans there. I thought, wow, you guys have traveled to Cancun? Like nobody ever traveled anywhere for Bellator. I was at Pride at the end,
Right.
but in Pride, you know, that was a Japanese show. Their primary focus was the Japanese broadcast. So we were the secondary broadcaster. So I never really got a sense of that. And the last Pride was April 2007. It just wasn't, there was no social media. There were some chat forums, but nothing I really went on. It was just kind of a show that I did, and I was thrilled to do Pride, but I never really got a sense of if people cared or it mattered. I knew Pride mattered, but my involvement, whatever. BKFC, these are the best fans. They're loyal, they're smart, they're dedicated. I love it all. I really, I feel so honored and I feel so humbled. And all I've tried to do as a commentator ever my whole life is just enhance the experience. No one is watching because of me. And I know that the fighters are the stars. That's absolutely the way that it is and that it should be. But if people watch and they enjoy my commentary and I make their experience a little bit better, that's what I aspire to do.
Awesome. Well, thanks, and hopefully you do even more, 100 more. You know what I mean? Like I just like to the moon. I want to see BKFC just keep going and doing great things, and we look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I do want to address this. So I know I have a couple of weird pronunciations. So I did see something in the comments, and someone was asking me about amateurs. So that's a fair question, and I love that, and I'm always happy to talk about this. I tell people I got plenty
Sure.
of love as a child. You guys can I've got a very thick skin on this stuff, and it comes from a good place. So my mom is from Cameron, Missouri, and she has a very classic Missouri accent where she will tell you that the first president of the United States is George Washington. As my grandmother would say to
Okay.
and dry the clothes. I consciously, as a high school kid who knew he wanted to be in broadcasting, had to train my brain to say wash instead of wash. My dad is
Okay.
from Queens, New York, and I wasn't raised by my dad. So and my parents divorced when I was 4. So that didn't really set in. But notice that I say tournament and not tournament like my late father would have, being from Queens, New York. I also have an English wife. I was also a soccer commentator for a long time, and I also worked for the BBC for about 15 years. Amateur is a pronunciation that I just feel is right. I also say mature and not mature. It's not affected. I'm
Okay.
not like Madonna when he was married to Guy Ritchie trying to say certain words. Sometimes I'll even say commentary instead of commentary, but that does sound weird. My wife will say aluminium and my girls laugh instead of aluminum, or macrame
Sure.
instead of macrame, or controversy instead of controversy. I don't know when I started saying like amateur and mature or immature. I might have done it my whole life. The only word that I consciously retrained my brain for was to say wash instead of wash. Anybody who knows anybody
Okay.
from Missouri outside of Kansas City or St. Louis knows that they will put that strange R in there. It's a really funny quirk to a Missouri accent. But hey, man, fair game. So it's an English pronunciation. I don't know where that came from, but I'm going to stick to saying amateur.
All right. Well, I wasn't gonna ask you because I was like, you know what? It's such a minor thing, but I appreciate like that lets me know that you were definitely on the Reddit. And you saw the stuff, and I appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, man, I have a thick skin, and I know all this stuff comes from a place of love. The fans are so great. No one's ever cheap shotting any of this, and I'm happy to ask that. Is a play by play commentator. You do what you commentate the way that you feel is best. We all have our own style. I think John Anik is amazing. John has a different style from me. We all have our own
Sure.
styles, and you do the best and the most authentic that you think you can. The way I commentate fights is the way I believe fights should be commentated. It's what I want to hear and what I put it forward. What I love is that I have a producer in Jonathan Evans. I have an executive producer in Dave Feldman Jr. I have a boss in Dave Feldman Sr., who have never given me a note, never given me criticism, never told me what to say or what not to say. The only other time I've had that twice in my career. Jerry Millen, who I worked for at Pride, Nobuyuki Sakikibara was the boss, but Jerry Millen was who I worked for on the
Sure.
English product. Let me be me, and Bjorn Rebney let me be me. When Bjorn departed, I still wanted to be me. They didn't want me to be me, and then you saw that I departed Bellator. But getting that freedom to do it the way that you think you should do it is a commentator's dream, because I can tell you it's not like that at most places. Um, a lot of people get noted to death, and talk to anybody who's ever been a pro wrestling commentator, and to be given the freedom to do it the way that you want and not be told to say things or don't say this or do this or don't ask that, it is absolutely refreshing. I remember when I was a soccer commentator, and I was mainly a regional commentator, but I did some ESPNs. I'm talking 20 years ago now. And I remember the producer afterwards said, "Oh, we really want you to ask your analyst more questions." And I thought, this isn't a talk show. He's either got something to say or he doesn't have something to say. I can ask him a question. I'm trying to call play by play and
Right.
identify who has the ball and what they're trying to do with it. If you notice on my commentary, I never ask questions. Now, Lytle's the best in the business, but even if you see me on smaller shows and I'm working with fighters who've maybe never done TV before, I'm not asking questions because I don't think this is an interview. I think commentary is commentary. I'm doing play by play. The color analyst is describing his things. I break it down. Play by play commentators are about the who and the what, and color commentators, analysts are about the why and the how. This whole asking questions thing, I've never been a fan of. And again, I'm so thankful that I work for people and work in an organization where they let me be me. And I am so humbled and appreciative that our BKFC community seems to dig what Chris and myself do, along with Cyrus and Jeff Houston and Sosha.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Have a great night, and hang on for just a second after we end this, please.
It's so great. Thank you so much. Thanks to all of you guys. I appreciate it.